Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive.
Mm.
You know how this works. We get a whole stack of research and, well, we basically try to figure out together today. It's Jimmy Carter.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, 39th president. But I feel like even though everyone kind of knows the name, there's a lot more to him than just, peanuts in the hostage crisis.
Yeah, I think that's true. And, I've been looking through all this stuff too. Biographies, histories. And he really lived through a fascinating period in American history. So, like, to understand Carter, you got to understand the times he lived in. There was a lot of turmoil, but also a lot of hope,
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. I mean, the guy's from Plains, Georgia.
right?
Tiny town,
Yeah.
a few hundred people. Not exactly, presidential timber at first glance.
Right. Small town, rural Georgia during the Depression. I mean,
Yeah.
talk about shaping a worldview. His family's peanut farm wasn't just a job, it was everything. And that really stayed with him, that sense of community, of hard work, of, depending on yourself and those around you. It's a thread that runs through his whole life.
So it's not just that he was a peanut farmer. It's that being a peanut farmer kind of made him who he became politically, too.
Exactly. And where he starts out politically is in Georgia, not D.C., State Senator 62, then governor in 71. And this is where things get interesting. He starts talking about a new South, not just economically, but racially, too. Equality, leaving the past behind. Pretty radical for a Southern politician back then.
Yeah, he was already making waves before he even thought about the White House. But honestly, in 74, Jimmy Carter for president, that must have sounded like a long shot.
Huge long shot. But America was in a bad place. Vietnam, Watergate, people had lost faith in the system. And here comes Carter, this outsider promising honesty, a return to basic values. People were tired of the same old political games, and he tapped into that.
So that outsider status plus, I mean, the guy campaigned hard.
Right.
And that got into the Oval Office in 76. But then he walks into a whole other set of problems.
Oh, yeah. Talk about trial by fire. The economy was a mess. Inflation was through the roof. Then you had the energy crisis in 79. People remember those lines at the gas stations, right? It was a national mood. Carter's calling for conservation, shared sacrifice. But it was a tough sell.
And he also kind of changed how we did foreign policy.
Yeah.
Less about military, more about talking, finding peaceful solutions, which leads us to Camp David.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you could argue his biggest achievement.
Camp David Accords, 78. Carter brings Sadat of Egypt and Begin of Israel together. 13 days of talks, super tense. The whole world's watching. And Carter truly believed peace was possible.
It wasn't just about believing, right? Had to be some serious strategy going on there.
Oh, tons. Carter understood these guys, their personalities, the pressure they were under. He created an environment where they could actually talk, trust a little bit, even though the issues were massive, land, the Palestinians. He didn't force a solution. He facilitated dialogue. And that led to the peace treaty between Egypt and Israel.
Treaty that's still in effect today. That's the impact of that moment. But
Right.
sadly, for Carter, it's not all diplomatic wins. The Iran hostage crisis, that really cast a shadow over everything.
November 79, Iranian radicals take over the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. 66 Americans held hostage. This wasn't out of nowhere, though. It goes back years. U.S. involvement in Iran, support for the Shah, this clash between a modernizing country and a rising Islamic fundamentalist movement.
And it just dragged on and on. 444 days, this symbol of America looking weak on the world stage.
Absolutely crippled Carter's presidency. The failed rescue attempts, the media frenzy, it all added to this image that he couldn't handle it, which, played a part in him losing the 80 election.
Tough break. Shows you how even huge accomplishments can get overshadowed by things outside your control.
Absolutely. But here's the thing, and we'll get into this more in the next part. It's after this defeat that Carter really finds his footing, his purpose, and his legacy. It goes way beyond just his time in office.
It's kind of amazing. After losing the election, the hostage crisis, all that, you'd think that'd be it, right? But Carter doesn't just disappear. He actually, redefines what it means to lead, not in politics, but through action.
Yeah, it really shows his character. A lot of people would have just, retired to write their memoirs. But Carter, he seemed almost re-energized, and he puts all that energy into the Carter Center.
Okay, so the Carter Center, what is it exactly? They do a ton of stuff, right?
It's hard to pin down, which is what's so cool about it. Founded in 82, and it's this mix of grassroots work and diplomacy, all focused on human rights and peace.
Give me some examples. Where are they actually making a difference?
Big one is democracy and elections. They've sent observers to monitor elections all over the world. Places where, a fair election is not a given. They're helping make sure people have a voice, that their votes actually matter. That's the foundation of a just society.
So it's not just talking about democracy. It's being there on the ground, making it happen.
Yeah.
What else?
They're also big into conflict resolution. They've mediated conflicts in Ethiopia, Sudan, Liberia, places where, violence has just torn communities apart.
That sounds seriously tough. How do you even begin to approach something like that?
They've built this reputation for being neutral, for listening to everyone, finding common ground, not forcing solutions, but helping people figure out their own path to peace. It's risky, often dangerous work, but they're committed.
It's pretty wild to picture a former president out there on the front lines like that.
Yeah.
But I know it goes beyond just the big political stuff too, right?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
One of their most successful programs is all about global health, and this is incredible. They've been a major force in almost completely wiping out guinea worm disease.
Guinea worm. I'm not even sure what that is.
It's a parasite, and it's nasty. Imagine a worm like 3 feet long coming out of your skin. Used to affect millions, mostly in Africa. Horrible pain, disability.
Wow, that's awful. How did they even start to fight that?
It wasn't fancy science. It was simple stuff. Education, community outreach, clean water filters. By empowering the communities themselves, focusing on prevention, they've practically eradicated this disease.
That's a huge victory. And it shows that sometimes it's not the big flashy stuff that matters. It's the consistent day-to-day effort that really changes things.
Right. And the Carter Center, they take that same approach to other health issues, river blindness, trachoma. They're working to improve healthcare in some of the poorest parts of the world.
Pretty remarkable that it all goes back to this one guy.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, the world noticed. He wins the Nobel Peace Prize in 2002.
Yeah, totally deserved. Years and years of work. And in his speech, he says something I love. He says, "I always had time to expand my life, to stretch my heart and mind, to find enjoyment beyond professional duties."
Makes you think, this guy's been president, dealt with global crises, and he's saying, hey, don't forget to live, find joy outside of work.
Right. We're all more than just our jobs. And for Carter, part of that was going back to Plains, Georgia, living a life grounded in family, faith, his community.
So it's not just what he did on the world stage. It's how he chose to live, period. A legacy built on actually doing stuff, consistently trying to make things better, one step at a time.
I gotta say, going through all this stuff about Jimmy Carter, it's hard to put him in a neat little box, President, peacemaker, humanitarian writer, teacher. He did so much.
He really embodies that idea of, never stop learning, never stop growing. And it's not just the big world-changing stuff either. This one detail I found really interesting. Carter's a big-time woodworker.
No kidding, like builds furniture and stuff.
Yeah. Seems like he gets a lot of peace out of it, this creative outlet, Totally different from politics and all that.
Makes you think. Even someone who's achieved so much still finds joy in those simple things, makes him seem a lot more, human, right?
Definitely. And it says something about leadership, too. It's not just about power. It's about doing what you believe in, whether that's building houses, fighting disease, or, woodworking. It's about living a life with purpose.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. What's the main takeaway? What can we learn from Jimmy Carter's life, his legacy?
I think the biggest lesson is that one person can make a difference. Carter's story proves that you don't have to be born rich or powerful to have a positive impact. It's about knowing your values, using your skills, and committing to something bigger than yourself.
He set a pretty high bar, though, right?
He did. But it's not about trying to be Jimmy Carter. It's about realizing that we all have the potential to make the world better in our own way. Maybe it's volunteering, maybe it's speaking up for something you believe in, or even just being a good neighbor, a good friend. It's about those everyday acts of kindness.
And it's about not giving up. Carter had some huge setbacks, but he never stopped trying to make a difference.
Exactly. Resilience, sticking to your values even when it's tough. He showed that hope and optimism can actually change things.
Well said. So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with this thought. What will your legacy be? How are you going to make your mark on the world?
Something to think about, and hey, who knows? Maybe someday someone will be doing a deep dive on your life story, seeing all the amazing things you did.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Jimmy Carter's life. We hope you learned something new. And if you have any thoughts or questions, hit us up on social media. We love hearing from you. And until next time, keep on learning, keep on exploring. We'll see you on the next deep dive.